She gave up her home, her job, and her life for a man who bought her favorite milk. She thought it was love, until she saw him kneeling on a cold marble floor, tying a little girl's pink shoelace. A little girl called him Daddy. The clock on the microwave said 3:04 a.m. Maya did not look at it for long. She already knew the time. She had been watching the minutes move since 2 in the morning, lying on her side of the bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to Mason breathe. Slow, even, peaceful. The way someone breathes when they have no guilt at all. She had stopped being angry about that. The anger had come earlier. Last night, loud and sharp in her chest. Now there was something else. Something quieter. Something that felt almost like cold air on bare skin. Not pain. Not sadness. More like a decision that had already been made and was simply waiting for her body to catch up. She slid out of the bed carefully, one foot, then the other. The floor was smooth and cool under her feet. Marble. Everything in this apartment was expensive. The floors, the curtains, the little dish by the sink that held 1 bar of French soap. None of it was hers. She had lived here for almost a year, and her name was not on anything. She pulled the suitcase out from under the bed. It was the one she had brought when she moved in. 1 bag. She had arrived with 1 bag, and she was leaving with 1 bag. At least, that was something she had not lost. She opened it on the floor and started to pack. She kept her movements small and quiet. She did not turn on the light. The city outside the window gave enough light, a gray and orange glow that came through the curtains and made everything in the room look soft and unreal. Mason was still sleeping. She could hear him from the bedroom doorway. The sound of his breathing made her pack faster. She took her clothes first. She did not take much. 3 shirts, 2 pairs of trousers, some underwear, a pair of shoes. She left the dress he bought her hanging in the closet. She had not wanted to leave it there, but she did not want to wear it either. Leaving it felt like the right thing. She moved into the bathroom and took her toothbrush, her moisturizer, the small bottle of perfume that was hers before she ever met him. She picked up a few other things quickly, without thinking too hard. If she thought too hard, she would either pack too much or not pack at all. She came back into the living room and stopped. The fridge was half open. She must have brushed it without noticing. Through the gap, she could see the white and orange carton of oat milk sitting on the top shelf. It was almost full. Mason had bought it 3 days ago. He always bought oat milk because she told him once, almost a year ago, that she did not like regular milk. She stood there and looked at that carton for a moment. She remembered when that small thing had meant everything to her. She had been so tired back then, tired in a way that went deeper than sleep. And he had noticed. He had paid attention. He had bought the right milk. It seemed like love. It felt like being seen. Now the carton just sat there in the cold light of the fridge, and it looked like what it actually was. A small price to pay for something that cost her everything. She pushed the fridge door shut. She checked the time again. 3:09. Mason usually woke up around 3:15 to get a glass of water. He did this almost every night. She had watched him do it so many times that she knew the exact sound of his feet on the marble. She had 5 minutes, maybe 6. She zipped the suitcase. The sound of it seemed very loud. She held still. In the next room, Mason kept breathing. In, out. Nothing changed. She put on her coat. She picked up her bag. She took her phone. She did not take the card. The credit card he had given her was on the kitchen counter, where she always left it at night. She looked at it. She did not touch it. In her bank account, she had $312. She knew this because she had checked 3 times tonight, as if checking again might somehow make the number larger. It did not. She had nowhere to go tonight. She had not called anyone. It was 3 in the morning. And she had no job. And she did not know where she would sleep. She knew all of this. She had sat with all of this for the past hour, and it was still the most terrifying thing she had ever faced. And it was still better than staying. She picked up the apartment key from her keychain. It was a small, silver key. She held it for a second. Then she set it down on the kitchen counter next to the oat milk carton that she had not taken. She walked to the door. She opened it. 1 year ago, Maya had a job that paid her well and took everything from her. She worked in a financial consulting firm, 12 hours a day, sometimes more. She was good at her job. She knew she was good at her job, but being good at it did not make it hurt less. She went to bed tired and woke up tired, and the tiredness never fully went away. It just lived inside her chest like something heavy that she carried from room to room. She met Mason at a dinner, a work event. He was easy to talk to. He asked her real questions and listened to the answers. He laughed at something she said, and the laugh was warm, and she thought, "This person is genuinely happy to be here with me." He called her the next day, and the day after that. A few weeks in, she told him she didn't drink regular milk, just a small thing she mentioned while they were making coffee at his place. She thought nothing of it. The next morning, when she came into his kitchen, there was a brand new carton of oat milk in his fridge. She stood there and stared at it and felt something crack open in her chest. No one had paid that kind of attention to her in a long time, maybe ever. The care kept coming. Small things, steady things. He would call her in the afternoon just to ask how she was. When she said tired, he believed her. He did not say, "Well, everyone is tired." He said, "You should rest." He said, "You work too hard." He said it gently, with his hand on her shoulder or his fingers moving slowly along the back of her neck, and she would close her eyes and feel the weight leave her body for just a little while. One evening, she came home from work at 9:30 and sat on the floor of her apartment and did not get up for a long time. She was not crying. She was not even thinking clearly. She was just done, empty in a way she could not explain. She called Mason. He came over. He sat on the floor with her. He did not tell her to get up. He sat beside her until she was ready, and then he made her tea, and then he said, very quietly, "Quit the job, Maya. You are exhausted. Let me take care of you. Just rest for a while." She had grown up believing she should never depend on anyone. Her mother had told her this. Her own life had confirmed it. She had worked for everything she had, and she was proud of that. She knew what it meant to take care of herself. But she was so tired, and he was so warm. She typed her resignation letter on his laptop. He sat beside her while she typed it, his hand on her back. His voice is calm and sure. When she hit send, she felt a rush of something that she thought was relief. She gave up her apartment 2 months later and moved into his. She told herself it made sense. They were together every night anyway. It saved money. She would look for new work when she was ready, when she had rested. She had savings. She had time. The savings lasted 4 months. She stopped looking for work, and she was not sure exactly when. It happened slowly, the way things do when you are not watching. Mason never told her not to look. He never said anything about it at all. He just kept taking care of things, and slowly, quietly, her reasons for looking started to feel less urgent. She was home. She was rested. She was comfortable. The apartment was beautiful. There was always food in the fridge. There was always oat milk. She did not notice what she had handed over until it was already gone. The sweetness did not end suddenly. It faded. That was harder, actually. Harder than if he had simply changed overnight. A sudden change would have been clear. This was not clear. This was gradual. This was her looking around one day and trying to remember the last time he had really looked at her and not being able to. Saturdays used to be theirs. They would sleep late and go out for coffee and walk through the neighborhood and look at things in shop windows and talk about nothing important, and it was easy and good. Then the Saturdays started to disappear. Just work, he would say. Something came up. He would say it without looking up from his phone. The phone was always face down on the counter. She noticed that. She told herself it meant nothing. He took his calls on the balcony. The glass door closed behind him, and she could see him through the glass, standing with his back to her, speaking in a voice she could not hear. She would watch him for a moment, and then go back to whatever she was doing, and not ask about it later. She cooked dinner, and he came home late, and the food went cold. She covered it in plastic and put it in the fridge and ate something else alone. She did this once, then again, then it became the pattern. The fridge filled up with covered plates, neat and quiet, meals she had made and eaten by herself while he was somewhere else. She started to wonder what was wrong with her. That was the worst part. Not his absence, her own response to it. She would sit in that beautiful apartment, alone, eating cold food, and think, I am asking for too much. I am too sensitive. People are busy. Relationships change. This is normal. She worked to convince herself of this because the other explanation, the one that lived at the back of her mind and grew a little each day, was too much to carry. She stopped calling her friends as often. Not because he told her to, because she did not know what to say anymore. What her days looked like was hard to describe to people with jobs and schedules and their own full lives. She felt ashamed in a way she could not explain, so she went quiet. The circle got smaller, the apartment got bigger. She was not a person living a life. She was a person filling time inside someone else's space. But she stayed. Because where would she go? She had no job. She had almost no money. She had nowhere. She was 30 years old, and she had traded all of her exits for a warm hand on her back and a carton of oat milk, and some days that trade felt like the stupidest thing she had ever done, and other days she was too tired to think about it. She stayed. Yesterday afternoon she needed air. That happened sometimes. The apartment would feel too still, too quiet, and she would need to get outside and walk somewhere until she felt like herself again. She had been doing this more and more. She put on her coat and walked for a long time without direction, and she ended up at an art gallery near the center of the city. She had not been to this gallery in a long time. She used to go to places like this when she was working, on weekends, when she wanted to be alone in a quiet room with beautiful things. She had forgotten how much she liked it. She moved through the rooms slowly, looking at the paintings without thinking about anything. And for a little while, she felt almost calm. She turned a corner into a large room with tall ceilings and high windows and a smooth marble floor. And she saw Mason. He was maybe 15 meters away. He had not seen her. She went very still, the way you do when your body understands something before your mind does. He was not alone. A woman stood beside him. She was tall and dressed well, with dark hair and the easy posture of someone who was used to being comfortable in nice places. She was looking at a painting and saying something, and Mason was nodding. Between them, holding the woman's hand, was a little girl, 4 years old, maybe 5. She had curly hair and pink shoes, and she was pulling gently on her mother's hand and looking around at everything with the wide-open curiosity of a child who finds the world very interesting. Maya stood behind a large sculpture, and she did not move. She watched Mason kneel down in front of the little girl. The marble floor was cold and hard, but he did not hesitate. He took the little girl's foot carefully in his hands and tied her shoelace, which had come undone. He tied it slowly and neatly, the way you do when you are not in a hurry, when there is nothing more important in the world than this one small task. Then he looked up. The little girl was looking down at him with her chin tucked in and her eyes bright, and Mason looked back at her, and his face changed completely. There was no other way to say it. His face opened. Something that was usually closed or controlled or simply not there fell away, and what was underneath was love. The real kind. The kind that had nothing to do with convenience or peace or ease. The kind that makes a person kneel on cold marble without a second thought. He had never looked at Maya that way. In an entire year of living together, eating together, sleeping beside each other, she had never once seen that look on his face when he looked at her. She stood behind the sculpture, and she understood all at once, and very completely, what she was. She was not the love of his life. She was not even a mistake he could not resist. She was in a room he stayed in, a convenience, a secret. He had a wife and a daughter, and a life that was real and whole and completely separate from her, and she was just the quiet place he came to when the rest of it got heavy. She stood there until they moved to the next room. Then she walked out of the gallery into the gray afternoon air, and she sat on a bench outside and did not move for a long time. He came home at 8. She had been sitting in the living room for 2 hours. She had not turned on the lights. She sat in the dark, and she was not thinking about anything. She was just waiting. When he came in, he reached for the light switch and saw her sitting there and stopped. He looked at her. She looked at him. She did not say anything for a moment. Then she said, "I was at the art gallery today." He was still, just for a second. Then he closed the door behind him. She told him what she saw. She said it plainly. Without raising her voice, she described the woman and the little girl and the pink shoes and the shoelace on the marble floor. She said it like she was describing something she had seen in a documentary, not something that had happened to her. It was easier that way. When she finished, Mason walked to the kitchen and opened a bottle of wine. He poured a glass. His movements were calm and unhurried. He turned and looked at her, and his eyes were steady and clear, and that steadiness was somehow the worst thing. It meant he was not surprised. It meant he had prepared for this. It meant he had expected this conversation at some point and had already decided how it would go. He said, She is my wife, Maya. We have a history. The family expects things. He said it the way someone reads from a document. Accurate, final, not cruel in tone, but completely without softness. He set down his wine glass. Then he said, "But you are easy. You do not demand things. You do not complain. You are my peace. Do not ruin this." She heard every word. She looked at his face. He was looking at her the way you look at something you find useful and want to keep. Not the way you look at a person you love. Not even the way you look at a person you feel guilty about. Just a calm, clear appraisal. She is mine if I say the right words. She will stay if I handle this well. He reached out toward her face. His hand moved slowly toward her cheek. She pulled back. She pulled back so fast it surprised them both. Her whole body moved away from his hand, as if she had touched a hot surface. She stood up from the couch. She did not say anything. She walked past him into the bedroom, and she sat on the edge of the bed in the dark, and she heard him finish his wine in the kitchen. And then she heard the television come on. An hour later, he came to bed. He fell asleep quickly, the way he always did, and Maya lay beside him and did not sleep at all. At 3:04 a.m., she got up. Now she was standing at the open front door of the apartment. The hallway outside was lit by a single ceiling light. It was a plain and ordinary hallway. Beige walls, a gray carpet, the smell of other people's dinners, faint and mixed together. She had stood in this hallway hundreds of times, coming and going, and she had never really looked at it. She looked at it now. She had no job. She had $312. She did not know where she would sleep tonight. She might have to call her friend Diane and explain, at 3 in the morning, why she needed a couch for a night, or possibly a week. She might have to explain everything, all of it, the whole year, out loud, in words, to another person who would want to understand. The thought of that was uncomfortable in a way that almost made her step back inside. Almost. She thought about Mason on the cold marble floor, tying a pink shoelace, and the way his face had looked when he glanced up at his daughter. All that love, all that open and unguarded love that she had never seen directed at her, not once, not even on the best days. She was his peace, he had said. She thought about that word, peace, the way he had used it, as if she were an object, a comfortable chair, a room with no noise. She had given him a year of her life, and all her independence, and all her confidence, and all her exits, and he had looked at her and seen furniture. She stepped into the hallway. The door swung shut behind her. The lock clicked. A small, clean sound. Final. She had not planned it, but she had not stopped it either. And now it was done. The key was on the kitchen counter. The credit card was on the kitchen counter. The oat milk was in the fridge. None of it was hers. She stood with her suitcase in the quiet hallway, and she waited for the feeling to hit her, the panic, the regret, the voice that always came after a big decision and told you all the reasons you were wrong. It did not come. What came instead was something she did not have a good word for. It was not happiness. It was not a relief, exactly. It was something simpler and colder and more honest than those things. It was just air. Just the feeling of breathing in a room that was wide enough. At the end of the hallway, there was a window. She had never noticed it before. It faced east, out toward the edge of the city, and through it, she could see the sky beginning, just barely, to change. Not light yet, not even close, but the deep, flat black had given way to something that was almost blue, the furthest edge of night, the place where night starts to become something else. She picked up her suitcase and started walking. She would call Diane when it was a reasonable hour. She would figure out the rest after that. She would get a job, some job, any job, and then a better one. She would find a room. She would start with almost nothing, which she had done before, which she knew how to do, which she had simply forgotten she knew how to do, because she had spent a year being taken care of. She reached the stairwell and pushed open the door. The air in the stairwell was cold, really cold, the kind of cold that reaches into your lungs and makes you feel each breath as a separate and real thing. She breathed in, and the cold went through her, and she did not mind it. She had been warm for so long in that apartment, wrapped in that warm and airless comfort, and she had not realized how much it was costing her until she stepped out of it. She walked down the stairs slowly, one floor, then another. Her suitcase bumped gently against each step. At the bottom, she pushed through the heavy front door and stepped outside. The street was empty and gray and cold. A bus went by far away, just two lights moving through the dark. A few windows in the buildings around her were lit up. Other lives, other people, awake, or working, or unable to sleep. She stopped on the pavement and looked up at the sky. It was happening, very slowly, at the very edge of the horizon. The darkness was giving way. Not sunrise, not yet, just the idea of it. The world remembered that light was coming, that it always came, that the dark did not go on forever. She pulled her coat tighter and breathed out. The breath turns to mist in the cold air, and then disappeared. $312. One suitcase. No plan. She thought, this is what the start of something looks like. Not beautiful. Not easy. Cold and gray and early and completely open. She picked up her bag and started walking. Behind her, somewhere up in that building, Mason was sleeping, still and quiet and perfectly at peace. He would wake up and find the key on the counter, and he would know, and then he would move on, because men like him always moved on. He had other rooms. He had a life full of other rooms, and in each one, something was being held in place for him, kept comfortable, kept available, kept quiet. She was not in the room anymore. She turned the corner, and the apartment building disappeared behind her. The city spread out in front of her, gray and still and enormous and full of possibilities she could not yet name. She kept walking. The cold was sharp against her face. Her feet were tired. She did not know this part of the city well at this hour, and she would have to figure out very soon where she was going. But with each step, the tightness in her chest loosened a little more. The tightness she had been carrying for so long that she had stopped feeling it as tightness and had started to think of it as just the way her chest felt. Normal? Just how things were. It was not normal. She knew that now. She walked, and the sky grew lighter above her, and the city began, slowly, to wake up around her. And Chloe walked through all of it, with her single suitcase and her $312 and the feeling of air moving freely in and out of her lungs. She had lost a lot. She knew what she had. It was enough to begin. If you made it all the way to the end of this story, thank you for being here. Stories like this one take time and heart to write, and it means everything to know you listened all the way through. If this story moved you even a little, please give it a like. It helps more people find their way here. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today. You might not know who that person is, but chances are, someone in your life does. And if you want more stories like this one, stories that teach you English and make you feel something real, subscribe to Teddy English Story. New stories are waiting for you. See you in the next one.